You're not tired. You're haunted. Most people don't realize this, but the weight you feel every day, that bone-deep exhaustion, that fog behind your eyes, that quiet ache that never quite leaves, it's not from this life alone. You've been carrying stories that didn't start with you. This isn't just another spiritual awakening video. This is about the invisible contracts you inherited the moment you were born, karmic, emotional, ancestral. You don't need another productivity hack. You need to understand what's really draining you. This video is a reckoning. It will show you why your inner fatigue isn't burnout. It's the backlog of generations. Why your sensitivity isn't dysfunction. It's ancestral radar. Why your guilt might not be yours, but a shadow echoing through your bloodline. We're going deep into the emotional inheritance you didn't consent to, but are now waking up from. We'll unravel what Carl Jung called the unconscious loyalty to family pain and begin the real process of individuation. The sacred art of becoming who you are, not what you were conditioned to carry. By the end of this journey, you'll see why breaking the cycle doesn't start with action. It starts with awareness. You'll learn how to spot the soul wounds disguised as personality traits. You'll feel the shift, because healing the past isn't just spiritual work. It's psychological rebellion. And the moment you realize the weight was never yours is the moment you start putting it down. The hidden weight you were born into. Long before you could speak, you were already absorbing a language no one taught you. The silent vocabulary of pain. In the home where you first learned to exist, there were looks, pauses, sighs, and unshed tears that carved messages into your nervous system. Carl Jung called this the influence of the unconscious, and your unconscious was being filled with shadows that weren't even yours. From generation to generation, ancestral trauma doesn't announce itself. It hides in moods, patterns, and unspoken rules. That feeling of inner fatigue you've never been able to explain, it might just be your first clue. Families pass down more than stories and names. They pass down unfinished business. Just like your father's eyes or your grandmother's nose, you may have inherited emotional weight, soul wounds that belong to someone else's tragedy. The burden of healing the lineage can often fall on the one who feels too much. It's not a coincidence that you've always been the sensitive one. Your inner life is more porous than others, and that's not a flaw, it's a sign. The mind doesn't forget what the family tries to bury. The emotional entanglement becomes a karmic contract you didn't sign, but still feel bound to honor. Have you ever noticed how your exhaustion doesn't quite match your current life? You sleep, but you don't rest. You laugh, but feel hollow. This isn't just burnout from modern life. It's inherited pain. Psychoanalysis and depth psychology have long hinted that the body remembers what the family forgot. It's the weight of unexpressed sorrow looping through generations. What was unsaid becomes embodied. That constant tiredness might be the unconscious loyalty your heart pledged before you knew how to say no. It shows up in ways that confuse logic. You stay in situations that drain you. You try to fix others as if that's your purpose. You replay emotional patterns like reruns of someone else's life. This isn't you being dramatic. This is shadow inheritance. And it's why practical philosophy, the art of living well, must include self-inquiry. Who are you carrying? What part of your inner dialogue was never yours to begin with? Jung would say this is the moment the individuation process begins, when the self separates from the inherited mind. When you start to see the story you were cast into, you can begin to edit your role. So maybe you're not lazy. Maybe you're not broken. Maybe your spiritual fatigue is the quiet resistance of a soul refusing to carry unseen trauma any longer. This kind of weariness is sacred. It's not asking you to push through, it's asking you to pause. There's wisdom in that stillness. Wisdom that whispers, what if you were never meant to carry this in the first place? What if this isn't a flaw in your design, but a fracture in the lineage that you were born to mend, not repeat? Emotional inheritance is real. There's a quiet lie that floats around in modern culture, the idea that time heals everything. But in reality, time doesn't heal what's hidden in the basement of the soul. Trauma doesn't evaporate. It gets transmitted like an emotional heirloom. Carl Jung knew this well. What remains unconscious is destined to repeat. That sense of unease you feel when nothing seems wrong on paper, that might be the echo of a transgenerational pattern still playing through your nervous system like background noise. And if you don't see it, you'll live it over and over again. Look at the phrases people use to justify dysfunction. That's just how we are, or it's always been this way. These aren't truths. They're trauma loops that have been normalized through repetition. When emotional pain gets suppressed, it doesn't disappear. It takes the form of family dynamics, addictions, silence, or shame. That sharp anxiety before holidays, that numbness in conversations with loved ones, those are symptoms of shadow inheritance. Your mind knows something's off, even if you were never told the story. The body becomes the historian when the family chooses amnesia. Have you ever looked in a mirror and seen a sadness in your eyes that didn't quite belong to you? That's the emotional weight of inherited pain. You might be carrying guilt that isn't yours, reacting to triggers that were planted decades before you were born. Psychoanalysis calls this unconscious loyalty. We think we're broken when we're really entangled. We mistake emotional exhaustion for weakness when it's actually ancestral intelligence. The soul keeps score of what's been passed down, not to punish you, but to give you a chance to break free. Healing begins with recognition. And here's something practical. Begin journaling what emotions come up in your most familiar conflicts. Trace them back. Who else in your family might have felt this way? What pain did they never get to speak? Books like It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolin offer great tools to explore this emotional genealogy. Therapy, breath work, even family constellation sessions. These aren't trends. They're maps for healing lineage. You can't change the past, but you can interrupt its transmission. And sometimes, that's enough to set a whole generation free. When someone says they're just tired, listen deeper. That fatigue might not be from life, but from lineage. That ache in your chest, that mental fog, they're messengers. They're here to tell you, this didn't start with you, but it can end with you. You're not broken. You're the one waking up. And with awareness comes the uncomfortable power to choose differently, to feel differently, to be differently. But that choice, it comes with its own emotional cost. Loyalty to pain can be subconscious. Most people don't realize they're loyal to suffering because it doesn't show up as a conscious decision. It shows up as staying too long in places that hurt. It shows up as recreating the same painful dynamics with different faces. Carl Jung spoke of the unconscious as a powerful force that guides our behaviors when left unexamined. And here's the hard truth. Many carry inner wounds as proof of love, as if by staying in pain, they remain connected to the people who never got the chance to heal themselves. That's not dysfunction, that's devotion disguised. We often repeat what hurt us, not because we want to suffer, but because it makes us feel close to those who did. If your mother never felt safe enough to rest, maybe you can't stop grinding. If your father never got to feel joy, maybe you believe your own happiness would be betrayal. These aren't random patterns. They're emotional contracts written in the silence of childhood. This is what Jung would call the tension between the persona and the shadow. The outer self smiles, while the inner self mourns. Guilt is the gatekeeper. Every time you start to feel free, something in you whispers that you're abandoning them. That inner voice says, "How dare you feel joy when they suffered so much?" This isn't your fault. It's the soul's ancient desire to belong. The mind may be rational, but the heart clings to emotional entanglements. Psychoanalysis shows us that these inherited burdens become part of the self-image. Breaking them feels like self-erasure, but you're not betraying them by healing. You're doing what they never had the chance to do. Here's a real practice. The next time you feel guilt for resting, for saying no, for choosing yourself, pause. Ask, whose voice is that? Is it really yours? Or is it the echo of generations who had to survive without choice? Practical philosophy teaches us that inner liberation starts with inner dialogue. Speak back. Reclaim your right to joy, even if it shakes the emotional foundation you were raised on. This isn't selfishness. It's sacred rebellion. You're not dishonoring the past by healing. You're redeeming it. Healing lineage isn't about forgetting the pain. It's about ending the pattern. When you begin to see suffering as optional, something old within you might panic. That's normal. Your nervous system has been trained to see peace as unfamiliar. But that discomfort, that trembling in the soul, it might just be the first sign of a cycle breaking. Breaking the cycle requires awareness. You can't heal what you still believe belongs to you. That's the trap. Many people wear inherited pain like a second skin, convinced it's their personality. But individuation, the path Jung outlined, begins the moment you pause and ask, is this truly mine? Awareness isn't just insight, it's interruption. It's the ability to catch a pattern mid-spin and choose differently. And sometimes, that awareness alone can shake something loose in your bloodline. It's the kind of power that doesn't scream, it observes. One of the most underestimated forms of self-healing is neutrality. Observing without judgment rewires the mind. Instead of diving headfirst into guilt or anger, you step back and witness. You become the one who notices the trauma loop instead of the one who acts it out. This is the beginning of inner liberation, when the self separates from a shadow. The moment you spot the pattern, it begins to lose its grip. And that's not magic, it's self-awareness in action. Think of it this way. If your family always avoided conflict, you might avoid hard conversations too. Not because you're weak, but because silence was modeled as safety. But now you see it. Now you know. That recognition is everything. From there, you could try something different. Say the uncomfortable truth. Break the silence. Name what's been hiding in the corners of your emotional life. A journal can help. So, can talking to someone who won't let you slip into your old role, a friend, a therapist, even a mentor. There's a real power in naming the cycle. Try it. Say it aloud. I see the pattern. I'm not continuing it. That sentence can become a daily ritual, a boundary spell, a new internal script. The mind may resist at first. It's used to the old identity. But repetition is how karma is created, and repetition is how karma is broken. Shadow work isn't about banishing anything. It's about seeing what was hidden and choosing something new, over and over again, with gentleness and grit. So no, you weren't born to carry the emotional weight of everyone who came before you. You weren't sent here to be the family sponge. You were sent here to end what they couldn't. But that kind of ending doesn't come with fireworks. It starts with noticing. Noticing the script. Noticing the voice. Noticing the fatigue that feels familiar. Because in that noticing, there's a choice waiting to be made. The exhaustion is a call to heal. That constant heaviness you feel, it's not laziness. It's not weakness. It's a sacred signal. Spiritual fatigue, emotional exhaustion, these aren't malfunctions. They're messages. Your body, your mind, your very soul is trying to tell you something. This way of living is no longer sustainable. Carl Jung taught that the psyche will cry out through symptoms when the self has been ignored for too long. What you call burnout might actually be a spiritual reckoning, a demand for inner alignment. You weren't made to carry everyone's emotions. That sensitivity you were shamed for, that wasn't dysfunction. That was your nervous system tuned like an antenna, picking up on unspoken family pain, social tension, ancestral grief. The problem isn't that you feel too much. It's that no one ever taught you what to do with what you feel. But that ends now. Through shadow work, meditation, grounding rituals, and real conversations, you can begin releasing what your lineage could never process. There's something sacred in being tired. Yes, sacred. Because tiredness strips away the masks. It brings you back to basics, to breath, to stillness, to asking the hard questions. Books like The Art of Rest by Claudia Hammond or Burnout by the Nagoski sisters give frameworks for understanding this fatigue, not as failure, but as feedback. When your energy no longer tolerates certain people, jobs, or conversations, that's your self waking up. That's the soul saying, I didn't come here to repeat. I came here to repair. The healing journey isn't glamorous. Sometimes it looks like sleeping more, canceling plans, saying no without guilt. It looks like writing down dreams or crying for reasons you don't fully understand. It means setting boundaries, even if your voice shakes. It means choosing peace, even if chaos feels more familiar. You're not falling apart. You're shedding what was never truly you. Psychoanalysis would call this an ego death. But let's just call it a homecoming. A slow return to the self, to conscience, to wisdom. And maybe, just maybe, this whole time, your soul wasn't breaking. It was breaking through. That exhaustion was never a full stop. It was a comma, a pause before the transformation. The part of the story where the hero doesn't quit, they awaken. And now that you've heard the call, you can't unhear it. You're not just tired, you're ready. Maybe it's not your pain, but it's been your prison. The moment you begin to question what you've been carrying, the real healing starts. So now I ask you, what if the exhaustion wasn't a curse, but a compass? What if the weight you've dragged wasn't yours to bear, but yours to release? The stories you inherited aren't the ones you have to live, but no one else can rewrite them for you. Only you can name the pattern. Only you can end it. So pause, reflect, look at the pain you've normalized, the emotions you've been absorbing like they were yours. Ask yourself, what do I need to let go of to finally feel like me? And deeper still, what would my life feel like if I was no longer loyal to suffering? The moment you step back and witness the trauma loop, you've already broken part of it. The rest is repetition, not of pain, but of freedom. Now that you've seen it, you can't unsee it. That's power. And that's your invitation. If this hits something deep inside you, don't just scroll past it. Apply this. Live this. Speak this. You were not born to suffer silently. You were born to awaken the lineage. And if you want more tools to keep unlearning what was never yours, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and stay close. There's more where this came from, because your healing has already begun.